The House panel investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, uncovering text messages authored by Utah Senator Mike Lee. Text from the Republican senator to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows showing Lee was working behind the scenes to try to overturn the results of the 2020 election as early as November 7th, the day the election was called for Joe Biden. In one exchange between Senator Lee and Meadows, Lee said, quote, "This doesn't have to come down to a binary choice between an immediate concession and the destruction of the credibility of the election process. There is a third way, exhausting legal remedies while cooperating with the transition process." In a later message, Lee also mentioned that former President Trump's lawyer, Sidney Powell, had a strategy to, quote, "put several states back in play." Joining me now to wade further into these messages and other happenings in Washington tonight is Julia Manchester, national politics reporter with The Hill. Always nice to see you, Julia. And I want to start with these messages between Senator Lee and Representative Chip Roy was also involved in this from Texas, and Mark Meadows. So Lee clearly trying to find a way to overturn the election results, but then he has a change of heart, it appears. He appears to grow concerned. What does this all tell us?
So it's interesting how this timeline all really emerged, Rutabaga. We saw that right after the election in November, figures like Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Chip Roy were on board with objecting to those election results and trying to find some way to potentially skirt that process or, object to them. However, we saw with Mike Lee in particular, as we got closer to December in that very infamous press conference with President Trump's lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, Mike Lee started to really strike a concerning tone about what was being said at these press conferences, the conspiracy theories that were being floated by some of the former president's allies, and those are very much reflected in those texts. And of course, in January, we know that there was a rally in Georgia that Mike Lee was present at, where the former president appeared to sort of call him out because he was frustrated with Lee and how he was trying to essentially object to the election results not going the way President Trump wanted him to and using his methods, for example. So, it just shows the timeline of how, as the situation became more complicated, as we got closer to January 6th and such, there was more concern among figures like Senator Lee.
It is interesting to see how this played out behind the scenes. None of this, though, implicates then President Trump, right?
No, it does not. It just shows how essentially Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, someone who was very close to the president, was interacting with these lawmakers. And we've seen other texts emerge between Mark Meadows and other conservative allies of the former president, many Fox News personalities, for example, other members of Congress, of the other major conservative figures. So it paints a broader picture.
I want to switch now to the debates. That's been a big talker, the RNC refusing to take part. What does this mean for political discourse going forward, this breaking of the tradition? And does it just mean that the two camps then retreat into their own silos instead of tackling their opposing views head on?
Well, that's the question we're all asking, because the RNC voting to not participate in these presidential debates that are held by the Commission on Presidential Debates doesn't necessarily mean nominees, the Republican nominee in 2024, for example, cannot participate. That's up to the nominee. However, we're seeing that the Republican National Committee is really making a statement by choosing, to encourage and its candidates not to participate in this forum. We do know that the RNC for years has very much, bemoaned a lot of the planning processes and the moderators, for example, at a lot of these election debates, saying that they are biased against Republicans, that the cards are stacked against them. We know that President Trump very much did that, especially in 2020. So we'll have to see how this plays out. We do know that the RNC could vote to change its rules to essentially encourage its candidates to participate in the debates. But for now, this is quite a political statement 2 years out from the presidential election.
That's for sure. Talking about former President Trump, does he still run the Republican Party? Because he's made some endorsements of others who, like him, have no political experience, Dr. Oz, J.D. Vance in Ohio. What will the midterms tell us about his political power and where it stands within the party now?
Well, it's going to be a test of his political brand. And that's why we've seen him, he's very much touting these endorsements. He's going to Ohio, for example, on Saturday to campaign, assumingly for J.D. Vance, and also to push his own political brand. But ultimately, this will be a test of his own political brand. But what's interesting is that in another Senate primary down in Alabama, we have that President Trump a few weeks ago withdrew his endorsement of Congressman Mo Brooks, who's running in that primary, and endorsed another candidate instead. So we're seeing the president very much watching how his cards are being played, watching the fundraising numbers, watching the polls. But with J.D. Vance and Dr. Oz, for example, I think that took a lot of us off guard because they aren't your typical political, machine candidate. They're outsiders. However, so is President Trump. So maybe we shouldn't be that surprised.
It's always interesting in Washington, Julia. Thank you. Have a great night. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.